Good morning. Welcome to our third day of our Smart Cities and Connected Communities annual summit. And this is our third year of this summit, and it's just gotten better each year. We regret that we can't be with each of you in person, which is always such a wonderful aspect of the summit. But what we did was really boil down the best of the best to make presentations this year in very succinct keynotes and webinars. In our first 2 days, we've developed themes around the 3 C's, which are COVID, climate, and cyber. We've covered economic distress, social equity, technology and innovation. Urgency is a word that has been used much more increasingly by nearly every speaker. Leadership as well, and the fact that so much of the burden at the present time on each of the issues I've just mentioned has fallen on the shoulders of leaders at the subnational level. Cities, states, counties, communities are all on the front lines right now. Today, my esteemed co-chair, Emma Hand, is going to introduce our U.S. managing partner, Mary Wilson, who is beloved internally within Dentons. And Mary is going to wake us up and tell us about what the day is going to look like. Emma?
Good morning. It is my honor this morning to introduce to you Mary Wilson. Mary is the managing partner of Dentons US and a member of its board. Mary practices in the fields of finance, healthcare, law, and tax-exempt organizations, counseling and representing borrowers, underwriters, banks, and issuers in finance transactions, and representing hospitals and health systems in corporate transactions. Mary is highly respected in her field, having held numerous leadership positions, and as you will see from her bio, she has earned far too many awards and recognitions for me to list them all now. Mary has been working hard within Dentons, particularly on our diversity and inclusion efforts, and we are delighted and much benefited by her leadership in those areas. So please join me this morning in welcoming Mary.
Thank you, Emma. Good morning, everyone. I am speaking to you from my kitchen in Indiana, which is right outside of Chicago, which is where I call home. And when we are not in the remote working environment, I am working in the Willis Tower, formerly known as the Sears Tower, in our Dentons offices. I have been in my role here as the U.S. managing partner for about a year, and I have to say, since I moved into this role, been looking forward to this summit. It's a highlight on the Dentons calendar. Clint and Emma and the whole team pulled together such an incredible group of thought leaders to really share cutting edge ideas in this space. So I know we've all been enjoying the first 2 days, and today will be no exception. We will be kicking off with Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley, who I guess in addition to his thoughts on smarter governments and what they can do to contribute to smarter cities, added the 4th C, the Chesapeake, when he shared a poem with us earlier this morning as we were waiting to launch. And I know we will all enjoy his thoughts. Then we're going to hear from some of the individuals driving cutting edge work in the utilities sector, representatives of 5 communities selected to receive the Smartest Utility Projects Award from Public Utilities Fortnightly. Steve Mitnick, the editor-in-chief of Public Utilities Fortnightly, will moderate this panel discussion, and we look forward to hearing these ideas directly from people on the front lines, and that'll be a fun part of our day. Emma, who we just heard from, will be closing out the daily programming for us. This summit, and I really wish I was there in person, because I know as incredible as the programs are, we all really enjoy chatting halls before and after the presentations and whispering to our neighbors about the incredible ideas and thought leadership that we're hearing. But I'm glad that we've been able to bring this to everyone remotely. It's important that we continue to share and advance these ideas, and we look forward hopefully to being in person in next year. And we are, on behalf of Dentons, so delighted that all of you have taken time out of these days that are so busy. When we first were told we'd be working from home, I thought I'd have all this free time, but it turns out I think most of us have learned that working from our homes, we have never been busier. So we appreciate your taking the time to be with us on these incredibly important issues and to hear from leaders across the country on these topics. So I turn it back to my partner and my friend Clint Vince for what I know will be a wonderful day. And thank you again for being with us.
Thank you so much, Mary. That was perfect. I'm deeply honored to introduce Governor Martin O'Malley, our keynote speaker this morning. Governor O'Malley is a senior advisor to Grant Thornton, guiding them on smart governance. None better for that role. We all think of Martin O'Malley as a former governor of Maryland, a presidential candidate, and a distinguished leader on the national and international stage. But I would like to talk for a moment about Martin O'Malley's unprecedented achievements as the mayor of Baltimore. Just 2 years after his upset election as mayor of Baltimore in 1999, Time magazine named Martin O'Malley one of the top 5 big city mayors in America. His new data-driven system of performance management, he coined that phrase with the term CityStat, earned this city, his city, the Innovation in Government Award from Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. And it has been emulated by mayors across the country and around the world ever since. When Governor O'Malley ran for his party's nomination for president in 2016, after 2 highly successful terms as governor of Maryland, Washingtonian magazine called him, quote, probably the best manager in elected office today. As mayor, O'Malley set Baltimore on course for the largest 10-year reduction of crime of any city in the United States. And as governor, under Martin O'Malley's leadership, Maryland's public schools became #1 in America for an unprecedented 5 years in a row. And now, Governor O'Malley has literally written the book for us, entitled, quote, Smarter Government, written for better results in an information age. He captures the essence of what our theme is for this summit and for our think tank. And Governor, thank you for joining us today. I know you have a lot of demands on your schedule, and we deeply appreciate your being here.
Hey, Clint, it's my honor, and I enjoyed being with all of you, or many of you, perhaps I met last year. So I want to thank you, Clint, and also Mary and Emma and everyone at Dentons for doing the Smart Cities Summit. And I also want to thank you for your partnership with Grant Thornton, whom I've had the honor to work with, which gives me the opportunity to work with leaders in smarter cities, smarter counties, smarter governed states all across the country. And to those of you watching, when your spouse asks you what the heck you did today, you can say, I met the guy who wrote the book on smarter government. A shameless plug there. It probably says something about our national politics that nobody else in America owned the domain smarter government. So now I do. So let me speak with you a little bit about smart cities. Clint gave you a very kind or me a very kind and lengthy biography, but to this day, if someone busted into my bedroom in the middle of the night, jumped on my chest and put a flashlight in my face and asked, who are you? I would say I'm Martin O'Malley, mayor of Baltimore. So my perspective on all of these things, I admit, was from the perspective of a mayor that needed to get things done, that didn't have the luxury of holding or hoarding information. Everybody could tell whether or not we were delivering better results. So this is what I want to speak with you about today. I want to speak with you about smart cities. I also want to speak with you about how smart cities are leading the way in what is really a global movement of smarter government. And Mary, you talked about the fourth C being the Chesapeake after climate, COVID, and cyber. I'd offer a fifth C, and that is collaboration. Along with that term, smart cities, we have seen move into the common vocabulary of our lexicon, the word collaboration, and it's significant. And it coincides with the movement now of a majority of our species now living in cities. So this is the scariest part of the presentation. This is when I try to figure out how to go to my slides and share my content. Let's see here. Start broadcast. 3, 2, 1. Hold on. He's going to do this. He can be taught. There we go. Can you see this, Clint?
Yes, perfect.
Cool. Okay, so I'm gonna fly here. As we say in mayoral vernacular, I'm gonna give you the nouns and verbs because you're a smart group of people and I know you can get this. For the first time ever, even as we face these, you know, there's a lot of, we can say a lot of things about this first time ever, correct? But for the first time ever, yes, the temperature of this planet has become superheated to the point that it's melting the polar ice caps. But also for the first time ever, a majority of us on this, what John Lewis, God rest his soul, called this little blue space capsule of life. A majority of us now live in cities. But there is also happening all around the world a very big crisis. And that is a crisis in Western democracy. And the crisis facing Western democracy today is Western democracy itself. Whether a government of, by, and for the people can still deliver the public things that make a city, make a county, a state, a country, a republic worth having. Today, according to Gallup polling, trust in our national government is at an all-time low. And yet, trust in local government is actually higher now than it was 20 years ago. Trust. So much of what's at the heart of the rise of smart cities better governed, is about trust. And the opening ante in this new game of trust is openness and transparency, the ability to show us whether what we're doing is working or not. So against this backdrop, this sometimes dark political backdrop in our own country of a diminished trust, there is this rise of the smart city. And what is a smart city? As best I can figure out, here's my take on the common definition of this term. First of all, it's not a noun, it's a verb. And smart cities take action to make themselves more inclusive, more prosperous, more sustainable and resilient, more educated and skilled, more connected, more mobile, more healthy and clean, and to make their citizens more safe and secure. And all of this in the rise of a smart city requires that cities make themselves smarter governed. 50 years ago or more, the great Robert Kennedy said that it is from the numberless diverse acts of courage and belief that human history is shaped. This is that famous, ripple of hope speech that he gave. Growing up in an Irish Catholic family, I thought this was standard issue for everybody's refrigerator. I thought everybody had this on a refrigerator magnet. He said, each time a man, and he meant at the time a man or woman stands up for others or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope. Well, that was true when he said it 50 years ago, but it's not so true anymore. Why? Because the numberless diverse acts of courage and belief are no longer numberless. They can all be numbered. Not only can they be numbered, they can be measured. Not only can they be numbered, not only can they be measured, but they can also be mapped. And that's the one insight that I wanted to underscore with you today. You probably already know it, but the one insight is this. Over just the last several years, two technologies have come together that are changing fundamentally the way we govern ourselves, the way we collaborate in order to advance the common good we share as a people, whether that's the people of a city, a state, a county, a country, or the planet. And those two technologies, even though our millennial children think they've been here forever, those two technologies are geographic information systems, GIS, and the Internet of Things. The ability to map, to model, and to measure dynamic changing human systems. This is a screenshot of my commute from North Baltimore to Georgetown when I was teaching there one semester a few years back. And if you told my neighbors in Baltimore, I need to travel from Baltimore to Georgetown at rush hour in the morning, they would say, oh, you can't get there from here. But what did I do? I do what all of us do now without even thinking about it, right? We put in the address and the coordinates and voila, our route is mapped. If there's an accident along the way, a pleasant sounding female voice on my iPad will tell me a quicker route is available now. And I take it. Well, while as ubiquitous as this is, as often as we use it every single day for deliveries or Uber rides or getting from point A to point B, this is a big new power and change. It is a first for democracy. We now have the ability to model, measure, and map dynamic human and natural systems real time in ways that all of us can see. And that has never happened before. And I believe that the proper deployment and the wider use and practice of these technologies in democracy will restore the trust that we need to overcome the big challenges we face as a people. In fact, already in cities especially, it is ushering a whole new way of governing. And this new way of governing is fundamentally entrepreneurial, asking the question, what works? It is performance measured, it is interactive, and it is collaborative. But it requires a big shift in the practice of leadership. So it's great to have that one insight, GIS and the Internet of Things, but it requires a shift in what has been 240 some years in the practice of leadership in our democracy. The first shift is a shift in the nature of leadership. Used to be that leaders saw themselves, and we saw our leaders, as sitting high atop that pyramid on the left of command and control. Authority is at the top, and this point of positional, situational advantage for the leader is high atop that pyramid where power is held, where orders are issued, right? Do it because I said to do it. But in the information age, when everybody knows everything at the same time as the leader, that is no longer the place of situational advantage or authority. In fact, title doesn't automatically bestow legitimacy, does it? The place of advantage, the place of effectiveness is now in the center of that collaborative circle, as close to the latest emerging truth as possible. And the other shift is the shift from command and control, the rule of do it because I said to do it, top down, instead to collaboration, being so close to the latest emerging truth that we can share and see and understand what's working and what's not. If in the old days the notion was command and control, do it because I said so, this new way of governing is a lot more like agile software development, you know? It's about the iterations. It's about whether it's working or not. It's about short sprints, huh? And in this new way of governing, we see more and more leaders, especially at the city level, but moving to counties and states, having the courage, what we used to think might have been foolhardy courage, to actually set strategic goals with public deadlines. Like, we will reduce crime by 20% by 2012. That was actually one of the goals we set for our state, and we exceeded it. You see leaders that use maps to show everyone the latest emerging truth. Oh, you mean the people that need to know? You mean people at the top levels of government? No, I mean everyone throughout the government and throughout the people who are actually in charge of government, the citizens, which is why you see also the most effective leaders across the country creating real-time public-facing dashboards, letting everybody know with green arrows, yellow arrows, or orange or red arrows where we're failing, let everyone know whether we're succeeding or whether we are not. But look, here's the thing. In this rise of smart cities and smart governance, none of this works unless the leader insists and drives a repeating cadence of collaboration and follow-up at the center of the enterprise. When I was mayor of Baltimore, we created CityStat. I joke, we got the Innovations in Government Award from the Kennedy School for the wild innovation of actually measuring what we did every day in terms of output, instead of measuring it once a year in terms of an annual input called the budget. And yet that's the way most city governments, county governments, state governments, national governments have been working, that straitjacket of annual budgets. When I was during transition, true story, after I was elected mayor, I had to sit down with our head of public works. And having been on the city council and now looking for every spare dollar I could find as the newly elected mayor in order to make our streets safer and fund greater drug treatment, I asked the director of public works about a big cost center I knew we had, and that was fleet, the management, the maintenance of all of the various cars and trucks that we had in our fleet. And so I asked the fundamental question. I said, Mr. Director, how many cars and trucks do we actually know? And he answered, 6,000. I said, 6,000? He said, 6,500. I said, 6,500? What is this, a quiz show? And he said, well, you know, how there's some things that you never quite get entirely on top of. We really aren't exactly sure how many cars and trucks we own. Now, that should have caused me to run like the cowardly lion for my life down the hallway and jump out the window, but that was just the way it had always been. And a lot of the old tenets of city government are things that I bet you've heard in working with large organizations, public sector or private sector. And these were the old tenets of city government as we found them in Baltimore, and not so unusual to the way the world was 15, 20 years ago in all governments across America. If the mayor really wants to know, we can find out, but we'll have to pull all our people off their other jobs, and it will take weeks. Sound familiar? Second tenet, old tenet of city government. We'll get to that as soon as we can, but it'll take a few months because our budget was cut last year, implicitly by you jerk. Third tenets of city government, and the red flag here is the word here. That wouldn't work here because this is the way we've always done it here. You have to understand something like we're already doing that here, or we tried that once here and it didn't work. Or the fourth old tenet of city government, I hope everybody forgets about this question before next year's annual budget hearing. Well, we replaced all of those, borrowing lock, stock, and barrel from the NYPD and CompStat. And we started using the map to put together what had been separated and separate systems of information. And we created a regular rotation of 10 meetings every 2 weeks, not once a year to put together the budget, every 2 weeks. And the conversations were all around these tenets: accurate, timely, intelligent, shared by all. You mean by some people? Only the people at the top of the government? Only the people in the very center of the circle? No. timely and accurate intelligence or information shared by all. It's the fundamental tenet. Rapid deployment of resources, effective tactics and strategies, relentless follow-up and assessment. We started and we didn't stop. When we, for one blessed hour in the city stat room, we might focus on solid waste, sanitation, trash collection. And Joe Kolodziejski, the head of solid waste, would be at the front of the room presenting at the podium. The screens on the back would show the indicators of whether or not we were making the city safer or not. And on the other side of the table would be me and my command staff, head of our budget director, finance director, our city solicitor, our head of our labor commissioner, our head of human resources, head of IT. And for one blessed hour, we would have the patience to ask the repeated questions to figure out how we could do things differently, how we could drive more effective collaborations in order to make our city cleaner. After that 1 hour was over, 15-minute break, and the next meeting would come in. And for one blessed hour, we would focus on the fire department. Same tenets, though. Timely, accurate information shared by all, rapid deployment of resources, effective tactics and strategies, relentless follow-up and assessment. And so it went for 7 years as mayor, and then I followed that with 8 years as governor, where we applied the same agile principles, the same smart city principles, on smarter governance principles and methods in order to model, measure, map, rinse, repeat, and improve. I'm going to give you now, finish up here with 3 examples, real life examples. The first one, and I could pick a lot of examples, I've only picked 3. But we did this enterprise-wide. We did it as a city, we did it as a state, and it was all enabled by the fundamental technologies of GIS and the Internet of Things that allows us to share real-time information with the entire collaborative enterprise. So improving public safety. When I was elected mayor of Baltimore, our city had become the most violent, addicted, and abandoned city in America. More population loss even than Detroit. By the end of a hard-won first year, we had driven homicides under 300 for the first time in 20 years. And President Clinton, on his way out the door, kindly granted our application to send us 200 additional police officers to help us in restoring public safety to all of our neighborhoods, especially our poorest neighborhoods where we had tolerated open-air drug markets and violent crime and shootings and murders for so long that they had done a series of TV series about us. So we had a decision to make. Where do we send the additional 200 police officers? Well, in the old ways of city governing, we might look at that multicolored map there showing the city council districts, and we might bring in the senior council person from each district and say, congratulations, you are going to receive 1/6 of 200 police officers. Where would you like them to go? That would have been the old way of governing, not exactly performance measured. Another way of governing would have been to look at the map where people voted for me in the greatest numbers, and I send the additional police officers to those parts of the city. That would be a sort of performance management, but it's not really the type I'm talking about here. The third way of governing would be, and the new way of governing, and the better way of governing for the common good that we all share, would be to look at that map on the right. Identify where the greatest numbers of our citizens, regardless of race, regardless of class, regardless of voter registration, where were the greatest numbers of our citizens being shot and robbed or murdered in the greatest numbers year in and year out? If you see those deepest, darkest red areas, thumbnailing that, you can probably see that it's probably about 5-6% of our city's land area. And that's where we sent the additional officers. But of course, every week, week in and week out, the 9 different police districts would come before the police commissioner in Comstat, and then they'd come before me twice a month in the regular rotation of city stat, once to look at public safety, the other time to look at how we police our police. And every day we asked the question, is what we're doing working or not? We adjusted, we adapted, and over the next 10 years, this is what happened. This is 1999, and by the way, it didn't just happen, we made it so. 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007. Over the next 10 years, we put our city on a path to achieve the biggest reduction in Part 1 crime of any major city in America. Didn't make her perfect. Didn't figure out a way to recruit police officers from Planet Perfect. We were constantly doing reverse integrity stings, looking for ways to improve civilian review to build up trust between community and police. But we saved a lot of lives. I borrowed this slide from a gentleman that was the deputy commissioner of the Los Angeles Police Department. And I share it with you because it's not just about policing. I find and I see in this slide kind of the articulation of development of smarter governance in cities and counties and states. But in this case, he said, look, in the LAPD since 2012, we moved from an organization where information was stovepiped to increasingly where information is shared by all. From making decisions based on intuition to making them based on evidence, from responding to queries or calls for service or questions instead to deploying to alerts, and from the ability to make nice maps to the ability to do some predictive analytics. Second example, roads and bridges and transportation. Many of us remember back in 2007, the bridge collapse in Minneapolis during evening rush hour. Moms and dads, some children plunging to their death when a bridge supposedly collapsed in the middle of rush hour. Shortly thereafter, we had a meeting of the National Governors Association, and Jack Dangermond, who is the head of Esri, who published my book and is the largest GIS company, I think, in the world. Jack said, you've got to get me a little bit of time with Governor Ed Rendell. I know he's your friend, used to be mayor of Philadelphia, and right now Ed had become the most outspoken governor about the need for us to make greater investments in our transportation infrastructure. And Dangermond said, I want to show Governor Rendell this new bridge app. He'll get it intuitively if you just get me some time with him. I said, Jack, Governor Rendell does not like blind meetings, and unlike most mayors who only have a 2-minute attention span, Governor Rendell has honed his to a 45-second attention span. Dangermond said, I'll take the 45 seconds, just get him into a corner with me, I want to show him this. So I drag a grousing Governor Rendell in the corner, and I tell Jack Dangermond, you have 45 seconds. With that, Dangermond shows him his laptop, and with the first click of the button, he says, click. He says, this is a map of all of the bridges in Minnesota. The green dots represent all of the bridges. Second click. He says, now I've color-coded those bridges based on open data shared by everybody on the structural integrity or weakness of those bridges. The green dots are the strongest, the red dots are the most rickety and deficient, and the orange and the yellow in between. He says, now, also with open data, I'm going to click on this next map, and we have expanded the size of the dot depending on how many human beings, how many souls travel over that bridge day in and day out. So you can see certain targets emerge for the most urgently needed repairs, given the number of people whose lives depend upon those bridges remaining sound. And then he said, now with this fourth and final click, I want to show you where the federal dollars land for keeping those bridges in good repair. And with that, he clicked on the icons to show the dollars. And Governor Rendell exclaimed, none of the dollars are landing on the targets. And Jack Dangermond said calmly, no, but they're all landing on the map. The ability to model, the ability to measure, the ability to map dynamic, changing human systems has given us, all of these things are the fundamentals for being able to do better predictive analytics about how we do what we do to deliver the public goods that make a city, county, state, or country worth having. This is a graph from Grant Thornton showing the evolution of predictive analytics, you know, right? You start where you start, you get better. This is in the context of reducing traffic fatalities. First step, descriptive. How many accidents occurred this week and where? Diagnostic. What are the causes of the accidents and where? Predictive. How many accidents will occur next week and where? Prescriptive. What actions can we take today to prevent those accidents from happening tomorrow? You get the point, huh? Third and final example. For all of you that may think, yeah, well, this is all fine for a city, but it can't be done on a broader level. Actually, it can. And the beauty of this new technology, and again, yes, I know GIS has been around for 30 or 40 years, but I'm talking new. It's only been in the last 10 years that every city's gone to 311 centers for customer service, and all of that's held together by one GIS map. So, but the beauty of these new technologies, GIS, the internet of things, is that they're not intimidated by scale. We were talking earlier before the call began about the Chesapeake Bay, largest estuary in North America. It spans over 6 different states. And the great Barbara Mikulski once said to me as I was coming into the office of governor, she said, you know, the problem with our efforts on the Bay is that while we have a lot of Bay programs, we don't have a Bay program. So what did we do? We started doing the same thing with this new technology, but this time it wasn't to reduce violent crime, it's to reduce the flow of nitrogen and phosphorus and sediment into the Bay. Fortunately, we had a lot of science to build upon. The people at the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science had come up with objective scientific measures of Bay health. They developed it into a Bay index that included water clarity, chlorophyll A, dissolved oxygen, benthic life, aquatic grasses, phytoplankton community. And they were able to put it all onto a simple kind of red light, green light fashion for every citizen to understand, breaking down the major tributaries. And this was the report card that they gave to the Bay in 2006. It was a D+, ranked only a 39. In fact, the truth of the matter is that for 300 years, the health of the Bay had been in decline as more and more population, more and more paved surface, more and more wastewater load and agricultural runoff and stormwater runoff flowed like poison across the 6 states to degrade the health of the Bay. Well, we figured out that you could map all of that, down to the smaller tributaries. You could figure out where the nitrogen and phosphorus was coming from. You could see on the western shore around Annapolis, the makeup was from different sources, you know, mostly from stormwater and septic systems. But on the eastern shore, it was agriculture. And there were certain actions that needed to be taken. There wasn't an infinite number. The scientists told us that there were actually the most impactful actions numbered 34. 34 leading and most impactful actions to reduce the nitrogen and phosphorus flowing into the Bay. At the monthly Baystat meeting, we brought in not only people, the head of the Department of Transportation into that collaborative circle, not only the head of Department of Environment and Natural Resources, but we also brought the head of corrections because we knew that part of restorative justice could apply inmate labor to planting trees and restoring bay grasses and advancing oyster aquaculture. Why was the Department of Transportation there? Because the largest amount of paved surface in the Bay that needed to be retrofitted to protect the streams from the stormwater runoff were actually owned by us, State Highway, right? 34 actions. We drove them every day in order to change those health indicators. These were some of them on agriculture. There were, leading one was planting more cover crops. We graphed it, we mapped it, we had a goal line. We got once we started doing this for a year or two, Virginia started applying the same system. Then we got the other 5 states in the Bay watershed. President Obama made it his first executive order, and we got EPA in on the game. We modeled, we measured, we mapped, we drove the leading actions. There was a finite number of agricultural acres. We knew where they were. We deployed the actions on those acres. Same thing with on developed lands. We knew that the leading action was upgrading our wastewater, our wastewater treatment plants throughout our part of the bay. We passed the legislation necessary to create the flush fee, $5 a month that everybody paid. Nobody liked doing it, but it allowed wastewater treatment plants, even in little places like Federalsburg on the Eastern Shore, to upgrade their wastewater treatment plants. We measured it over time. We accelerated what we could do by bonding it. We looked at the actions we could take on natural filters on open land. We graphed it, we mapped it, expanding stream buffers, planting trees. We created an ecological ranking of every parcel of land in the state. So with Program Open Space, we knew we were buying things that actually contributed to water health. And this is what happened over the course of the next several years. This is 2006. This is 2007. Oh, before I go into that, another true story. When we set a public goal on this, our environmental secretary was very reluctant. She said, "Governor, please don't set a goal with a deadline on clean water." I said, "Sherry, why not?" She said, "What if we don't hit it?" I said, "What if we do?" She said, "Yeah, but it takes a long time. What if we don't?" I said, "Yeah, but what if we do?" She said, "Yeah, but what if we don't?" I said, "How long are we going to play this game?" So we set a goal of reaching the Healthier Bay tipping point by 2020. That point at which our driving of those 34 leading actions, week in and week out, would join forces with the restorative powers of nature to make the Bay a little healthier every year instead of sicker every year as she had been for the last 300. So this is 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, a lot of rain that season. By the way, red is dead, green is life. 2012, 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17. I love that map.
Amazing.
We, in 8 years of trying, we put together the longest string of successful improvement the Bay has ever seen. That rock can roll back down the hill. In fact, over the last 2 years, we have not been running up the escalator as quickly as, the runoff is taking us down. But it can be done. It's just about doing the math, doing it at scale. By 2017, by those objective scientific measures, the health of the waters of the Chesapeake Bay were better than they had been in any year since 1985. So you get the point. Conclusion. Start and don't stop. The data will never be perfect. Don't wait for perfect data. Don't wait for perfect human beings. Communicate, collaborate, cooperate, usually on natural acts between non-consenting adults in government. But the data, the map, and the method makes it all possible. Start and don't stop. To borrow a page from software development, be agile, create 2-week sprints, start and don't stop. Embrace a radical commitment to openness and transparency, measure performance to lift up your leaders, and watch as the 80% of your organization between the leaders and the laggers starts following the leaders instead of rocking back towards the laggers. Have the courage to set public goals with public deadlines. And for all of the talk in the smart city environment and smart governance about sensors and the wonderful world of sensors, Clint, like you got to put sensors on light poles, sensors on the ground, sensors everywhere. We already have sensors. They're called human beings, and they all have smartphones. In fact, maybe one government will figure out that we can actually take contact tracing to scale. If only we would unlock and use the technology that travels around in all of the handheld devices that we caring human beings have. At the end of the day, it's all about getting more citizens into the game of affecting real change. It's about the connection. It's about restoring the trust that is at the center of a republic that delivers the public goods that can save lives, public goods that can can also save a planet. And that's why I get excited about smart cities. And that's why I believe that our best days as a people are still in front of us. So thank you all very, very much.
Governor O'Malley, that was really masterful. And it's easy to see why you were once named the best manager in elected office in the United States. Thank you for writing a book on smarter governance. We all need to buy it, read it, and amplify it throughout our think tank and well beyond in our own networks. And thank you for your precious time here today. Last thing I'll say is that my family and I are living at the present time hunkered down on the eastern shore of the Chesapeake Bay, and the improvements that you have made are so palpable for us to see, you and your team.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I'm personally incredibly grateful for your work there. We look forward to working with you and Grant Thornton together on advancing the themes you've mentioned, and we couldn't be more pleased with your presentation today. So thank you.
Thank you, Clint.
This is one of my favorite portions of our summit each year. We team with Public Utility Fortnightly and my dear friend Steve Mitnick, who is the editor-in-chief and the co-owner of Public Utilities Fortnightly. And this is a pretty amazing panel. Steve and PUF have scoured the United States and determined who the really top utilities are in terms of doing smart city type of projects. And I'm very excited to hear from each of you. I know our audience is. And let me give a really quick introduction of Steve, who I think I've known possibly nearly 30 years, and in many different important roles. And then Steve, you can introduce each of your distinguished guests and PhDs and all.
We were 30 years, so that we were about 10, right? In elementary school, I think.
I remember I had just gotten a bigger bicycle.
Yeah.
Steve Mitnick is the editor-in-chief of Public Utilities Fortnightly and the president of its parent company. Steve and his team have transformed PUF into an industry-leading publication. I guess I can say this now. Years ago, it used to sit in the inbox, but now it's really the publication I reach for. It is that exciting and current and helpful. Steve has a rich and varied history in the energy world, having served on leadership teams with the energy practices of McKinsey, Marsh and McLennan, and PHP Hagler-Bailly. It's been a joy for me over the years to watch Steve soar in each of these positions and in each of his professional roles. Today, Steve will moderate a very special panel with 3 utilities selected by Public Utility Fortnightly for groundbreaking projects in the smart cities and connected communities context. So Steve, let me let you take over and introduce this wonderful panel.
Yes, this is really an amazing group. I guess it was about 2 or 3 months ago when Public Utilities Fortnightly announced a special feature and competition, and we asked for nominations from around the country throughout our industry for the smartest utility projects. Now, this was a little bit of a development from last year, because last year this was called the Fortnightly Smartest Communities Award. And but we thought that there's so many projects that they're not transforming an entire community, but they're really outstanding. So we got a lot of nominations, and it took us a while to pick through them. But, and there were a lot of great ones. And so in the September 1st issue of Public Utilities Fortnightly, we're going to acknowledge and highlight all of the very good, or many of them that came through. But these three that we're gonna talk about today are really extraordinary and outstanding and indicative of what these companies and the industry overall is accomplishing. And it's not surprising, because I happen to be so fortunate to know Warner Baxter, who's the CEO of Ameren, and Tom Fanning, who's the CEO of Southern Company, and Ben Folk, who's the CEO of Excel. And they're like, they can't get out a sentence without saying the word innovation. I don't know what it is. They're probably hard to control by even their own family. And I'm sure these folks on our panel today know this well, but they've worn that stress well. And so first, and then we'll get into a conversation and celebrate the projects that they are leading or are involved in teams with. And the first, I'm gonna go in alphabetic order. So Tracy and Kevin, you gotta be patient. We're going this way. Dr. Gee, he's like an amazing, let me say, his resume goes on and on. First of all, he hangs out at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. And this really, he's smart, but he probably doesn't stand out there because there's a lot of smart people there. It's a high-tech hub. He has a PhD in biological engineering, which, you know, by the way, I could use. So we'll have to talk about afterwards. There's a few things I could use fixed up. And he's a manager of digital innovation of Ameren. And he's a senior data scientist, which, you know, we'll find out what that is. But, and his project, the project he's going to be talking about, we designated as the smartest digitization project, which is one of these big things in smart cities and smart communities and all the smart stuff that Vince, that your conference is concerning. So that'll be the first one that we'll talk about. And then second, down in Birmingham, Alabama, Tracy is sitting there. She's the director of end-use power delivery, fleet, and gas R&D. So she's like at the really cutting edge. And if you're that director at Southern, that means you've got a lot of smart people that you're telling what to do. So that's, Tracy's going to tell us about that. And we thought her project is the smartest microgrid project. We got a lot of nominations in microgrids. So it's hard to, there were some really good ones, but this one, it's at Georgia Tech. So that's really kind of special. And this project has a lot of cool things about it. So that's why this is the smartest microgrid project. And Tracy West, she's going to talk about that. And then last but not least, Kevin out there in Minneapolis, he's director of transportation electrification. Guess what? That was the smartest transportation electrification project. And almost a half of all the nominations came in on that. So we had to, like, you know, comb through those. And the Excel project, Kevin's project, is really creative and innovative in a number of ways, and I think can be really impactful. Maybe it'll be adopted nationally in some way. So we're going to talk about that too. So anyway, that's the introduction, and maybe we'll get into the, what do you think, Clint? Should we get into the discussion?
Let's let it rip.
Okay, whoa. Well, by the way, Clint, he was like he was in WWE. He was like, you were like a wrestler, a boxer, or maybe you still are. Are you on TV still? So when he says, let it rip, you know, there's something there. Okay, so we're gonna talk about these projects and we'll have a discussion. And the first thing I wanna ask each of you is what makes your project distinctive? And a little bit different than what you see industry-wide. And I know you've got a lot to talk about. So first, Dr. Gee, or just Gee, if we're on a kind of personal basis, tell me what's distinctive about this digitization project, gas leaks and all that. Go ahead.
I think the main distinction, I think, comparing to this this project to others within our industry, even other industry, is we gave a substantial step further from our legacy model that was basically a score-based system, right? So what is a score-based system for gas assets, right? Managing gas assets could be, you have, for example, a asset that's very old, and you assign a higher risk to that, or there's a material that is more breakable, breathable, corrosive, so you assign higher score, or if it's a stable plastic, lower score. So you can go, so the gas integrity management team and also our division engineers, they would sit down and discuss what are those factors we should consider, the factors that are considered to be important. And they go one by one, and within, let's say, the age of the, as I mentioned before, the age of the asset, right? 10 years old, 20 years old, 30 years old. So they have a certain level, all those factors have certain like 4 or 5 levels. And they'll try to combine them and create these scores to be able to go to our almost 100,000 risk areas. That's how the territory was breaking down, and say, okay, this has a high score, so we should allocate more resources to that. I think the main difference, when you have a score-based model is a really good model when you have just a few factors, right? Because you can, the analogy of one that, like the baby health, right, is a score-based model that when the baby is born, use is very effective because you only have a few factors, no more than 10 factors to assess. When you're looking at like hundreds of factors, and within each factor you have many different levels, the combinations of all those factors can be like thousands, even millions, right? So we don't have the brain capacity to process all that information. So the gas integrity team, they knew that they have all this database internal for about information about the asset, but they wanted to combine all of this. Like, for example, let's add the population density, the soil type, is this a business district? So there's many different factors that should be considered. And the machine learning model was able to process that information and give them a unified score for each of those almost 100,000 risk areas. So the main thing was using that tool. They say, okay, we have this data, and how can you help us? So they went to the innovation center and would say, we can use machine learning. This is going to be actually a very good fit for machine learning. And that's how I can say that was very separable from what we have been doing so far, not only in the gas divisions, but other divisions as well.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. That was great, Guy. And now Tracy, and I forgot to mention, even though like me, you don't have a PhD, you only have an MBA from Stanford University. So you could be like a big shot in Silicon Valley, but you're over there at Southern, so they were able to get you. So now talk about what's really distinctive and different. There are a lot of microgrid projects out there, but this thing they're doing at Georgia Tech is really something. Tell us what's different about that.
Yeah, so Steve, this is a really cool project that took several years to develop. We actually got it into the rate base. So it is a rate base funded joint research facility set up with Georgia Tech. And more importantly than my MBA is my mechanical degree, engineering degree from Georgia Tech. So I'm been pretty closely with that group over there. And anyway, so we have set this thing up to be a joint research facility to test plug and play DERs in an urban environment. So we're hooked into the network underground, which I think is something that really makes this a little bit special. So it will be a test bed in the network underground distribution system that serves the CODA building, and the CODA building's pretty cool. It's a brand new building that has the high performance computing center for Georgia Tech, but it also serves mixed commercial use customers as well. So we'll get to look at a lot of different variables on both sides of the meter as we take this thing into operations. It
Wow.
also, let me add one more thing. It has a fuel cell. This will be our first fuel cell application microgrid scenario as well. So that's probably worth mentioning.
Yeah, yeah. I forgot about the Georgia. We just hired a smart guy with a master's degree from Georgia Tech, and it's a little hard to work with him because he's smarter than the rest of us. But we're trying to work on that. Now, lastly, we want to hear from Kevin because he has the smartest transportation electrification project. And you know, there's a lot of projects like that. A lot of utilities have that. But this thing you've got going at Excel is really something. Tell us about what's different. And by the way, Kevin, he's just from MIT. So, you know, not bad. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Steve. Yes, I'm Kevin Schwain. I'm very excited to be here and really proud to accept the award here on behalf of my colleagues at Excel. The program that we're talking about today is it's really a subscription program for residential customers that are interested in an electric vehicle. And so maybe I'll just describe it really quickly and then tell you what I think is different or unique about this. You know, I think the first step is that we're working with about a dozen auto dealers kind of in the metro area we serve here in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Because you know, that really is kind of the first connection point with many of these customers, and it's really an important time, you know, when a customer is deciding how they're going to charge their car, and you know, we want to make sure we're part of that process. So, first, kind of, you know, engaging customers when they're buying that car, when they're taking delivery of that car, you know, we see is really important and exciting. The next piece is that we're installing a charger of their choice in their garage. So we're sending out an electrician to help them figure out how to get their home wired. You know, the next piece is that we're really automating that charger vehicle. So it's happening, you know, when that's best for the electrical grid. And by automating that, it's going to make it really easy for customers. And so, you know, and we're doing all that at a single low price that customers will pay each month, regardless of how much energy they use. So that's the subscription pilot program in a snapshot. You know, I think what's different about this and innovative is really two things, and it's really our approach. I'd say the first is that we didn't necessarily start with, you know, kind of all of these bedrock rate design principles we certainly hold dear and see as really important. Rather, we started with, you know, what do customers want? You know, how do they pay for products in other industries? And, you know, what might they expect from us as they embrace this new technology? And so certainly that's one of the items that led us to the notion of a subscription program. You know, I think the other element that was really unique here is really working with the auto dealers themselves and making sure we're integrated into that sales channel, and really understanding from them what difficulties do they have when they're talking to a customer about charging an electric vehicle. And so this is designed as much for that auto dealer's experience as it is for the home or the residential customer that really needs to plug into the wall here once they bring their car home.
Yeah, and Kevin, I saw that the subscription rates, these flat rates can be like $33 a month or $44 a month. I need to buy a car, so I'm thinking of moving to Minneapolis so I can be eligible for your program. But that's a pretty cool part of it.
Absolutely, yeah. I think anything that helps customers understand immediately kind of how easy and affordable, you know, this technology can be is going to eventually help us to sell more cars, make customers happier, and realize all the benefits of electric transportation.
Now, the second question we want to go back to Guy, and for each of you is, how did this project kind of come about? Like, you know, you're just, you know, sitting around one day and you were a little bored and you said, let's do this. No, there must have been something, some process, a fancy, you know, you guys got together. How did this thing come about and then develop and, you know, maybe get approval from your big shots in the company? Guy, tell us about that.
It's a great question. So it came about when at the time I was a data scientist at the innovation center that I manage now. And we have the team from the gas team that came to us and they say, hey, we have all this information and we need to figure out a way that we can use that information to make better decisions. They had the feeling that we could do it because of the nature of the lab, right? It's an innovation lab, and the lab is broken down into, we use University of Illinois interns led by full-timers. We have a data science team, we have a software engineering team, and so they knew the kind of our structure. Say, hey, can you guys help us with that? And we start discussing, and we saw, yeah, no, I think you're a very great candidate for apply some kind of machine learning model to it. And I think what is different about what inspirational and led to a lot of creativity is because is our setup, right? We have a very creative type of setup. So we have the University of Illinois interns, and they can be interdisciplinary team, could be like PhDs in physics. It could be just a C computer engineer, a graduate. We have all these mixed types of teams, and we went together. They have all these ideas, unbiased. They see a new problem. They ask questions that have not been asked for 20 years because they just knew, and so we're led by this full-timer. So we have this team, and I think one of the key aspects for the execution, the guest management team, they were very proactive working with us. So the engagement was extremely high. So the execution of the project was successful for every single step at the time, because we wouldn't wait 1 month to go back to them and say, hey, how things are going. We have our cadences of formal meetings, we have our stand-ups, but if we have to talk, we just would reach out to each other. It was a very strong relationship building. So we knew that if there's something wrong with the data set, for example, we would have immediate feedback. We know, okay, go in that direction, change this is not necessary. So we had our data engineering process was so much better because we could speak with them. And when we start producing the results, they say, hey, this is great, but how can you explain that better? So then we come up, one of our interns came up with this, well, let's use this explainable AI. So let's go through every factor, all the combination of factors that gives let's say a very high risk score for that area. Why that's happening? So we go, okay, this factor is important because maybe between assets that are older than 4 years, they might have a problem, or maybe because just the material type or the number of the concentration of people in the area. So it was basically the setup we had, the collaboration setup, agile and interactive with a lot of iterations. That was the execution and brought the creativity and all of that.
Yeah, well, that's great. And then now, Tracy, let's talk about how your team kind of got to this point of at the Georgia Tech. I guess you went to Georgia Tech, so maybe one day you just said, oh, we got to put a microgrid somewhere. I want to put it at my alma mater. So is that how it worked?
Not exactly, because I have a lot of other universities that want to get in line with this thing. But actually, one of our former executives, Leslie Seibert, we do a lot of brainstorming with Georgia Tech, and so she was instrumental in coming up with this idea. But it's pretty cool because when you think about Georgia Tech was all over it because it's multidiscipline. So when you think about this microgrid, it's helping out the electrical engineering school with their Center for Distributed Energy. It's helping out the mechanical engineering school because of the buildings to grid and the energy management systems of the CODA building. It's helping out the industrial engineering from optimizing the processes and the data that comes through the College of Computing. So the engineering school at Tech was really intrigued by having a joint research facility. From our side, it's a Georgia Power owned asset and operated asset, and it allows us to plug and play on the generation resources in a microgrid. It looks at non-wire alternatives for us, and it allows us to look at that interaction of the customer on the other side of the grid. So benefits to the grid, benefits to the customer. It solves a lot of problems for us. So we just saw a win-win, and we put it into the integrated resource process a couple of years ago. It passed, and now it's in the rate base. So we're super excited that we have a commission that's forward thinking and saw the benefits for the customer on this as well. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's great, Tracy. And now Kevin, let's talk about how your process came to be. And I love it, especially another part that I really love about yours is the involvement of the dealers.
Right.
Because we always talk in the industry, the car dealer, you go to a car dealer and you say, I'd like an electric car. And the guy said, well, I don't know much about electric cars. How about this one over here? A good old whatever. We've been making that since the 60s. So, but talk about, Kevin, talk about the process of how you got to this point.
Sure, yeah, and I think we were doing a lot of work as utility, trying to understand, what were the barriers that to adoption that a customer might feel, might experience, and I think you hit on some key ones there, Steve. I think what we observed is really kind of two basic facts that we were aiming to overcome. The first is that even these early adopters, these really engaged customers, really found it difficult to articulate the cost savings, or even to conceptualize what's a kilowatt hour, how much do I pay for a kilowatt hour, how does that compare to a gallon of gas? That even folks that kind of intuitively understood what this was about really had trouble making those connections. And a step beyond that, just as you said, Steve, a lot of these customers would go to an auto dealer and ask these questions, and certainly that was pretty, answering those types of questions is pretty far outside the scope of what an auto dealer might be trained to do or be capable of communicating to a customer. So we knew that we had to come up with some solutions. We had to make this easier, both for the customers and just really make that sales process much more fluid. So really, it was those two observations that I think drove us in the direction we've gone here.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, thank you, Kenny. Well, now the third, now let's get into the creative juices. And now, Guy, you already started talking about this because you got, you got these interns and you got these, different groups and disciplines. But were there some really creative parts times when someone said, aha, I got it. We got to make them polka dot instead of striped. Well, tell us a story about that.
That's a great point. I think we have a couple moments like that. One was we're like, okay, how are we gonna present because we really wanted this to be a capability for the guest team to use, and not just like an Explorer or something nice to look. They can use, and they are using. They are being used in January as a tool that to be almost the main one to be classifying frequency of failure for gas leaks. And so one of the things was the explainable AI, right? We were able to implement the algorithm and we showed them all the parts. There's a lot of parts for this, but we showed the ones that they liked, the graphs, the visuals that they can see what's happening. And so it was an intern that was like, okay, we should be using this now, because one of the things we're using is called XGBoost model. It's a machine learning model that it's very effective for more structured data, tabular data. So one of the things that we found, there was another tool that was built on top of that model that was able to scrutinize all the factors that we found to be important to create a high risk or a low risk, right? And then we share with them. So that was a moment that was we were like in this situation. Okay, this works really well, has good accuracy, precision, but how we gonna be this gonna be used, and we can trust it. And so we were able to create this build this explainable AI to the model. Another moment was another time in terms of the creative spark. We're trying to how are we gonna represent this model? We have like the model is still some outputs with the best features, right? The features that are important, the factors that combined you'll be contributing to a higher risk or a lower risk. I think the way we're able to go to tweak the algorithm and extract all the probabilities of the model, and then we're able to actually combine them and assign for each of the 100,000 risk areas. So now, before comparing to the legacy model, you couldn't do much more than 1,000. It's not doable. Now, every single of the 100,000 risk areas we have a probability of risk associated to that. So they could say, okay, for the first 100 risk areas, we're gonna have a certain type of allocation, resource allocation to make sure they are higher risk. We're gonna put more resources on that one. So I think, and this what I loved about that in these interactions with, especially with the interns, when you empower them, they really come. They're very like passionate, and they come and they say, okay, yeah, I found a solution. That they give you 2-3 options, and then we're like, let's test it. And I think that dynamic makes not only my team excited, but also we call customer, but our partner in the gas management. We are digital, they are gas, because they will say, yeah, this is a great idea, try it, and then they see the results would share. So I think the creativity, those aha moments happens. I mentioned 2 of them, but even more of them, they occur during the process. So hope that helped.
Thanks, Guy. Great. Now, Tracy, you have a few choices there. First of all, there's the underground part of it. I did a little underground transmission in my day, so that's really interesting. And then there's the fuel cell part of it. What were some, creative moments where people said, no, forget that. You got to do it this way. I got to figure it out. Tell me about that.
Well, you're right about the fuel cell. Creating a green microgrid in an urban environment is a little tricky because you want to go towards solar and wind, right? Well, that's not feasible in a downtown environment. So the fuel cell came into play, and we said, okay, we got to figure out a way to design around the fuel cell. So we actually did. I mean, that was one of the fundamental parts and pieces that we said, okay, we're starting here. So that's one thing, but also we basically set up this living lab as a classroom so that students can come in and learn about microgrids and their components and the grid itself in a real life environment. So I think that's a really cool thing to be able to expose this next generation of utility engineers to where we see the world going.
And how was it to work with these students? Because they're just, they're bright-eyed. Maybe they think anything can be done. And I'm sure they think Southern could do anything. So how was it? Was it invigorating to kind of work with these students?
Well, we're just getting underway, but I will tell you one thing with students is you've got to get them into a safety mode first. So you have to do a level of training with safety and let them appreciate just how dangerous electricity is. And when you're around batteries, the dangers around batteries or fuel cells. So there's just a little bit of, I don't want to call them naive, but they're just new to all of this. So that is the first thing we worry about, and we make sure that they're up to speed so that they can work safely in the environment. I think the other thing is you don't want to squelch their creativity. They ask a lot of questions. Never have a dumb question. You want to embrace everything they come at you with, and they're just it's fun. It's fun, and you're kind of excited when you leave the room going, you know what? The world's going to be a better place 20 years from now. I can retire safely and know that these folks are going to carry it forward because they're just bright, great aspirations. So a lot of fun working with students.
Yeah. Now, Kevin, how about any growth spurts in the development of your project where maybe you were going down one path and then someone said, no, wait a second. If we go down there, it'll be, if we make it a fixed price, then the consumer will say, oh yeah, by the way, that's cheaper than gas. Tell me about any stories there.
Yeah, and when I step back and think about, what were the things we did differently? Where is the real innovation here? In a lot of ways, I'd point back to the rate design because I think that is where we really had to challenge ourselves and eventually put forward something that would perhaps challenge our regulators and other stakeholders that we work with when we introduce something new here. I think a lot of that innovation really was, stepping back, starting with maybe what we know customers in this technology need, and trying to marry that with, what we know to be these kind of better off principles around rate design, and finding a way for those two things to kind of coexist in one package was, I think, the kind of the secret sauce that we were seeking here. And so, we came forward with an approach that we think did a pretty good job of that. But we know that that's just the beginning, and we're going to have to do a lot more. We'll learn a lot from this first attempt, and we're confident that you give us another chance, we're going to get smarter and smarter about how we do this and meet those customers' needs while still respecting, again, all these principles that are very important at the end of the day.
Oh, that's great, Kevin. Now, this is my favorite question that we had, that we're structured here for, and it figures because I want to ask, what about your project? How does it serve the public interest? That's all. Public Utilities Fortnightly. We're all about that, so we can't get off of that point. And each of your projects are, we really think, extraordinary, magnificent in that. And if you think about this conference overall, that's the whole idea. We're taking, we're going to take cities, parts of cities, and all of cities, whether how the cities manage, how people move around cities, how people communicate on 8G or 20G or something, and so, but it's for the public. So first, back to Guy. I think this one is kind of a softball question.
Very, completely agree.
How does this digitization and AI for the safety of gas pipelines, how does that serve the public interest?
Yeah, I think that the answer, the basically what we're doing in itself, like the title, what we're doing is kind of a answer that question. Like, we're trying to come up with the asset management tool for gas that is gonna gives much more visibility about the likelihood of our asset to leak. And this is a public safety. And Amarin, I think that's one of our mantras, right? We want to make sure the safety first. And I think having a tool that is going to help our engineers to use and make better decisions and strategizing, prioritizing our gas distribution grid in a way that is safer. I think that's is a very straightforward for that, and not only also for our customers, but also to our Amarin employees as well, right? That they're going to be dealing assets, they're going to have more information associated with those assets. And the third one I would say for public is the environmental impact, right? If you have good preventions of gas leaks, you prevention like an explosion or something, you can potentially have side effects, environmental side effects. So, but it is for number one is our customers, making sure we have enough information, better information that we can keep our assets health, and they can be used. That information can be used to the next generations of engineers and improve upon that capability.
Yeah, and gas safety, that goes down to even lives. And I know the regulatory agencies. Yesterday we were on a Zoom session, and we had Commissioner Satya Lever from Illinois, Commissioner Maida Coleman from Missouri. In your states and every state, they really care that we're doing the best thing possible to protect property and safety. So great work. Really exciting what you're doing.
Thank you. We're excited.
Okay, now Tracy, so how does, not just serving the interest of Georgia Tech, which maybe is good enough, okay, but what you're doing here, you're just plowing, moving the envelope and proving out some things that are gonna probably go way to scale. Georgia, Alabama, there's probably something, Mississippi, I don't know, Southern's all over the place, and nationally. So what you're doing there, you're proving out stuff that's gonna go like wildfire, right?
Yeah, so this creates a knowledge center for assessing DERs, for microgrid components, for looking at the end use customer interaction there. And so we've got the ability on our side to really learn a lot to provide clean, safe, reliable, affordable energy to all of our customers, as well as carry forward Georgia Tech's research agenda through their Strategic Energy Institute. And so our goal is to take the learnings out of this and apply them across our footprint And then hopefully, you know, we also have Power Secure on the other side who goes behind the meter. And, you know, they're the ones who won the bid on this. So they've got a dog in the hunt too here. And so we, you know, we have the ability to really take all of this and leverage it across a wide footprint. So we're super excited about this facility.
And you should probably give us a word about Power Secure, because Southern, I don't know what that, but you all do a lot with Power Secure, and they're kind of an innovative organization. Can you say a word about them too?
Yeah, so Power Secure, we acquired them 2015, I believe, and they basically are the largest microgrid company in the country right now. So they serve folks like the Home Depots of the world, to some campuses out in the West Coast, you know, that we're not supposed to talk about, but have rings around them. So there's, you know, there's all kinds of customer bases that they serve on the other end of the meter to help with resiliency, reliability, cost issues, for green, you know, endeavors. So yeah, we're learning a lot by having them on the other side of the meter help us understand the customer's needs, especially outside of our footprint on a national level. So yeah, so Power Secure is doing really well, and they are based up out in North Carolina. So yes, they're not part of the regulated. They're out supplying everywhere else as well.
And one more thing is, I think you had mentioned that maybe it's the Georgia Public Service Commission. Maybe this came before them, and they said, yeah, that should be kind of a rate-based project. So they must have considered whether this is in the public interest too. Talk about that part for a second.
Absolutely. And so everything that we bring into an IRP, and hence a rate base, has to have a business case behind it, as well as what does this do for the customer? I mean, there's the money side of it, but you have to clearly show how our customers are going to benefit for them to say, yes, this is a good thing. And I in Georgia is super forward thinking, and they can see things coming down the road, and they're willing to let us spend some money up front to learn lessons, so that when we actually apply, we come in with some knowledge, because we've been able to prove to them that they'll get their money's worth, that there's value added in doing the R&D up front. So that's been a great plus for us.
Okay, so now Kevin, lastly, this is not going to be too hard, because I think electric vehicles, you could make the case, is in the public interest. I think now the statistics show that more of the country's carbon footprint is in cars and trucks as opposed to the grid. The grid's getting cleaner, and those cars, you know, there's a couple of Teslas out there. I can't afford one, but there's a couple out there. But the electrification of the transportation fleet is vital if we're going to meet these carbon goals. So, but you tell us about the public interest here of what you're doing, and you know, spreading across the country too.
Absolutely, yeah. I love the chance to talk about how electric vehicles are in the public interest, Steve. So this is a softball, as you said, but I will take that. You know, first of all, this program, it really is aimed at making it easier to buy an electric vehicle and then charge it at home overnight. And so we think that's strongly in the public interest. And, you know, I guess for everybody's benefit, I'd describe those public benefits in three ways, or put them into three categories. The first is that we have the ability to really reduce the cost of transportation for everyone. Everyone that's, you know, stops purchasing gasoline and diesel fuel and starts, you know, fueling with electricity has the potential to save money. And so that's a really strong value proposition in itself. As you said, Steve, the carbon benefits, excuse me, the ability to reduce carbon and you know, improve air quality are really paramount as well. As you said, you know, the electricity sector has been getting cleaner and cleaner, and now we have this opportunity to use that clean electricity towards the transportation sector. And so, you know, we see this as a no-brainer to start looking for end uses like transportation and saying, how do we help? I think the third category of benefits that put this into the public interest, it really has to do with charging that electric vehicle at home overnight. And because really, if we do this right, we see a potential to not just save customers money when fueling their vehicles, and not just to improve the environment, but also to put downward pressure on electricity rates for everybody. That is so that, we see this future in which everybody that uses the electricity grid is going to benefit by bringing on this additional load and really managing that in a responsible way. So, we see this as strongly in the public interest, and feel like innovations that we're talking about here today are going to be the way we really deliver those benefits to all of our customers.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. So now we're kind of winding up here, and but I just want to talk a moment about how inspiring it is to hear about. I know you're not the only ones out there. You've got teams, and then some of the utilities that are almost as good as your utilities, they're doing creative, innovative things around the country. It's really inspiring, and it's moving this smart movement forward using AI, digitization, creative and alternative technologies, and just good smarts. So it's really cool to hear from you. We were trying to think of, what else can we do for you? We're going to have a big feature in Public Utilities Fortnightly. I know that, so you guys will become mega stars, have like millions of followers on, Twitter and stuff like that. So there's that. We were thinking, should we have a special Public Utilities Fortnightly mask? Should we give out? But, some people like the N95, some people like N200, whatever. So that was hard. So it's really just from our heart, on behalf of Public Utilities Fortnightly and Dentons, who hosted this thing, is to say thank you so much. Thank you for your service to your communities and to our country. And please accept that as and thanks for doing this. Before you go, don't shut off, don't switch your channel, everybody out there, because there's a whole nother day of this Dentons thing. I got things mixed up. The astronaut is still coming up tomorrow, Dr. Ghosh. And then the guy who's the head of the World Resources Institute, it's not just it's the entire World Resources Institute. They've got him. They've got Lawrence Jones, who's about the most interesting guy. He's at the vice president of EEI, and he's one of their keynoters. So there's a whole bunch of stuff coming up. This was just a warm up for all that other stuff. Thank you so much, Guy, Tracy, Kevin, for doing this and for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Steve, that was such a, you made this fun and brilliantly informative in your usual good way. Before Emma closes us out, I do want to mention a couple of things. Tracy, you received your engineering degree from Georgia Tech and have worked with them closely. Deborah Lamb of Georgia Tech, who runs their Smart Cities program, is a co-chair of the Dentons Smart Cities and Connected Communities think tank pillar for universities and NGOs, and she's been a terrific contributor. Kevin, with your MIT background, Ernie Moniz, a former Secretary of Energy, and created the Energy Initiative at MIT, longtime professor. They're co-chairs our energy pillar. And Guy, I don't know if you were able to hear our panel yesterday, where we had Morgan O'Brien, the founder and executive chairman of Anterix, which is bringing 900 megahertz spectrum to the electric industry. Ameren is the first forward-looking company to sign an MOU with Anterix to bring this exclusive LTE network to the utility industry. Tracy Southern, again, in groundbreaking work with Southern Link, also is very is really a pioneer in bringing spectrum into the utility industry. And Kevin, we all have long admired the wonderful decarbonization work that Excel stands for, another great step toward public interest. So I'm not surprised that your respective companies were chosen by Steve and Public Utilities Fortnightly, doing really exceptional leadership in the industry. And let me say, Emma, that Steve did such a good job of describing tomorrow. I hope that will make your job easier right now. But thanks for this really wonderful panel.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Definitely, it has been a terrific panel today. And we have very much enjoyed hearing about these projects and the breakthroughs that are happening in, on these fronts of how do we leap forward. And, it's been, we've had terrific panels all 3 days so far. On the first day, we heard a lot about the need for connectedness, for being able to connect government and services with the community, and being able to be responsive to understand the community's needs and to meet them, how to connect, keep populations that are at risk of becoming isolated as we move into a digital age, like our low-income populations, our rural populations. How do we keep them connected? And preparedness about, for the next pandemic. Of course, this virtual summit has been impacted in so many ways by the pandemic, and one of them is in the shifts in prioritizations and perspectives that a lot of people across industries have had about where they need to be focusing their time and attention to be able to respond to these types of global crises more effectively. In our second day, we heard a lot about coalitions and the need to be forming coalitions that can reach across previously siloed industries, public-private partnerships. How do you gather people together who have the information and the skills that are needed to sort of hack some of these problems? And I think today we had a really terrific example, or several really terrific examples of what can happen when that kind of collaboration is achieved, and the real power of interdisciplinary collaboration leading to creative breakthroughs for problems that we have been struggling with, with everything from the smart governance initiatives that Governor O'Malley has been leading and speaking about, leading to the use of analytics to better allocate public resources to the more urgent problems, to the 3 projects described today by our panel, all of which were collaborations of folks from different disciplines who wouldn't usually work together to come up with a way to meet a public need and really advance a public interest. And so I just really want to thank everyone on our panels today, all of our speakers today, for providing such lovely and wonderful examples of how collaboration can really, that interdisciplinary collaboration can really work to advance smart communities and smart cities, and really help us get to the next level of achieving public benefit and meeting the needs of our United States and global population for better access to services, and greater safety, greater reliability, to improve the climate and try to prevent the worst outcomes of climate change. And so again, thank you to all of our panelists. As Steve so kindly mentioned, we have a wonderful group of speakers in for tomorrow, which will be our last day. We're starting again at 11 o'clock, and I hope you will all join us. We have Lawrence Jones. We also have, as Steve mentioned, we also have Annie Dasgupta, who's the Global Director of the World Resources Institute Ross Center for Sustainable Cities. And we're going to have a panel on dynamic new projects and developments around the world. So we're going global tomorrow, featuring Shihoko Goto of the Wilson Center, Robert Boylan of Solidia, apologies, Dr. Amitabha Ghosh of the NASA Mars Exploration Rover Mission, and Wendell Ross, Jose Manuel Lorraine, and Igor Ostrowski of Dentons. And so we hope that you will all join us tomorrow. And again, thank you once again to all of our terrific panelists for such a wonderful day today.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Steve, and your terrific panel, Governor O'Malley and Mary Wilson. And we look forward, hopefully, to seeing most of you tomorrow at 11 o'clock. In the meantime, have a safe and productive afternoon, and we wish you the best.
Thank you.